Hello everyone and welcome to another chapter of You Have the Right to Remain Fat. We're going over chapter 3 today again because my recording got really garbled last time. I'm hoping everything turns out okay this time. You'll notice that this is the Monday video. Well, I'm going to cover chapter 3 today, 4 on Wednesday, and we're kind of doing away with that veggie skit, that evil veggie skit that Virgie had. The reason for that being, I got to thinking about it and I decided to pre-watch the video, which I don't typically do, but there really wasn't anything for me to comment on. It was, even in her own words, it's a campy horror flick, and it was very, like, D-movie levels. It was plenty cringe, but there wasn't really much for me to comment on. I would recommend that you watch it. It's high-quality cringe content. But there wasn't any points being made except for at the very end. And it was something that we've heard from Fergie time and time again and that I've already responded to. So I'm going to just kind of do away with the veggie skit, and we're going to cover chapter 3 today and then 4 on Wednesday. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. I grew up a self-assured, bossy, ridiculous, theatrical little fat girl. If I wanted to do an impromptu 45-minute talent show featuring only me in the middle of dinner, this was viewed as totally normal and actually quite laudable behavior. I was always eccentric. My mother, grandma, and grandpa are all very fashionable people. My mother used to be a master thrifter, often purchasing things like denim skirts and overalls from the second-hand store down the street, cutting them into many versions of their original manifestations, and then adding lace flourishes and puffy paint to create elaborate rococo ensembles. So, couple of quick notes. One, I think the fact that she can even identify in herself that she was bossy and theatrical and would put on these 45-minute impromptu events. I can't remember if she has siblings or not, but if she did, it seems like perhaps she was the most indulged of her family. If she was an only child, this makes even more sense. But it was, from the sound of it, it was impromptu in the middle of dinner. Like, I don't know, it seems a little spoiled to me. Number two, I find it interesting that, she talks about her mother getting stuff from the thrift store and basically upcycling it, and that's great. I want to be clear. I love that practice. I really want to get into that practice myself. My sewing skills are not there, but I would love to get into it. But isn't, like, a big thing with the fat acceptance movement, like, how dare you take bigger items meant for bigger people and then trim them and rework them for your slimmer shape? So I'm surprised that Virgie's putting this on display here. My grandmother is a bit more reserved, but loves a good sparkly flourish. In her old age, she has developed an affinity for glitter nail polish from Daiso. My grandfather was a peacock, always dressed in yellows, greens, hot pinks, sometimes even in floral prints. He had gold teeth and a 1993 gold Ford Thunderbird to match, which I inherited after he passed away in 2015. My family isn't perfect. In fact, my family is highly dysfunctional, but they have always been very good at making me feel like the queen of the world. I grew up feeling worshipped in a lot of ways. In fact, my pet name in childhood was Reina, the Spanish word for queen. Now, see, that to me says a lot about who Virgie is as a person. It's one thing to feel love and safe and protected as a kid. To feel worshipped as a child seems a little bonkers and seems like it could do a lot to your personality. So I think that kind of lends to Virgie's sense of, one, she clearly thinks she's always right, and it's very clear how much she tries to make herself the center of attention always. And I mean, to a certain extent that's normal, but there was something always with Virgie that felt narcissistic, I guess. Like, even in the introduction, when there was the weird connection between a woman with cancer and her bullying experience, there's this bit of narcissism, and we can kind of see this with how she describes her childhood as feeling worshipped, and her pet name was Queen. Like, seriously? My grandparents raised me, and they were both immigrants from Mexico. I grew up learning osmotically how to code switch, hustle, make $1 out of 15 cents, and love America. Capitalism, sandwiches, Cap'n Crunch, Rainbow Bright, She-Ra, peanut butter, Barbie, fruit snacks. Singing songs about how anyone could grow up to be president. Bootstrapping was something I watched my family do proudly every day of my life. The idea behind bootstrapping is that anyone can earn anything as long as they want it badly enough. All they have to do is pull themselves up by their bootstraps. This is one of the primary cornerstones of American aesthetics and ideology. It is also the foundation of diet culture. Now, see, I was actually with Virgie for a degree. I have a big issue with bootstrapping ideology, especially in today's climate, when a person can work a full-time federal minimum wage job and not afford a single one-bedroom apartment anywhere in the U.S. That is not, bootstrapping is not the answer to their problems. Like, inflation has sent food prices through the roof, wages are static, there's only so much that bootstrapping can do. The issue that I have with her tying it to diet culture is that, by and large, you have a hell of a lot more control of your body size than you do of your economic circumstance. Like, they're not really two ideas that you can tie together. Same thing with any, like, career path that you want to pursue. There's plenty of barriers depending on who you are to break through those glass ceilings. Comparing that to diet culture and dieting and body size feels like it's very much cheapening the arguments for those other issues. You can far more control your weight through bootstrapping than you can almost any other area of your life, I think. Like, even in education, bootstrapping isn't always enough. And granted, there are some situations where bootstrapping would not be enough to lose weight. I'm not going to deny that. There's situations where wanting to and putting your hard work in just aren't enough, but those are rare in the circumstance of losing weight. They're rare. Unlike many parts of the world where fate is considered to be something that lies beyond the reach of average humans, in the U.S., fate is considered to be something that is resoundingly within the realm of every person's control. Failure is an individual problem, not a collective cultural or political problem. The idea that if you don't have something, it is because you didn't want it badly enough, or you didn't try hard enough. Though the allure of this idea is undeniable, there isn't much room for serious considerations of justice or historical unfairness in this narrative. But it is this fantasy, the American dream, that is the siren song for so many. It was the siren song for me and my family. Bootstrapping is as American as apple fucking pie. Thus, I can't disagree with this. My grandfather was a never missed a day of work in his life kind of man. He knew what Americans thought of Mexicans, and so he always felt the pressure to be twice as good. He always wore cologne and applied hair oil so he looked coiffed. Every night he scrubbed his fingernails with harsh detergent not meant for the delicate skin of his hands. He spent so much time reading books, learning new English words, and always trying to outsmart everyone. He picked up every extra hour offered at his job. He saved and budgeted and went to church and bought a home. He went from being a janitor to the head chemist at the factory where he worked for 20 years. He was a good Mexican man. He was the evidence that anyone could start anywhere and make something of themselves. What was invisible to the outside world was how tormented he was, how much he worried, how often he cried in secret, and how ashamed he was of his sadness. He didn't speak of the times that he was humiliated or passed over because he had an accent. He was filled with rage, but took it out on himself and the people he loved most, my grandmother and our family. That's actually a fair point. The narrative of bootstrapping doesn't show, like, the behind-the-scenes type things. Like, you can work yourself really hard. I graduated with honors from my university, and the cost of my own mental health to get there was insane. But I don't want to bring too much of my own narrative into this, considering that what her grandfather went through was significantly harder. It's to be passed over for something that you can't control, to work your ass off every day to maintain appearances. That's a lot on a person's psyche. In many ways, his story of bootstrapping was a lot like my own. I gradually learned that I was less than others because I was a fat brown girl. The lessons I learned about my inferiority of my fat body were brutal. The lessons I received about my racial and gender inferiority were subtle by comparison. But both educations were real, and in some ways, the brutality of fat phobia made it easier for me to recognize its existence later. All I wanted was for people to treat me like a person. I thought I could bootstrap myself into humanity. I do not like the comparison. This comparison of what her grandfather went through to what she went through does not feel equal to me, especially since she's putting such an emphasis on her weight. If there was more of an emphasis on her race and even gender, I would have more sympathy, but she's saying that, her fatness was the big thing. And I was a fat kid too. I mean, granted, we grew up in two different places, but goddamn, I don't think that it's comparable to working so much of your life trying to get ahead and being kept down by things that are completely outside of your control and the judgments of others. I don't think that they're comparable. As I grew up working my little ass off to get straight A's so I could go to one of the top 100 colleges and work in an office and wear suits every day, success. I didn't even skip a beat when I was asked to bootstrap with my weight. Dieting mapped seamlessly onto the pre-existing American narrative of failure and success as individual endeavors. The way I understood it, my weight was clearly a problem, my problem. I learned that it was my responsibility to fix my problems. I mean, to a degree, that's true. There's so much more nuance that's required here than I feel like Virgie's giving. There are problems that are within your control to fix. This is not 100% the case. There are problems outside of your control that you can't fix on your own, but something like weight is entirely individual and for you, and unless there's like some big medical issue, it is within your control to change. I wasn't taught that some people don't like fat people because they are bigots, and it's their responsibility to not be bigots. I was taught that everyone on the planet hates fat people because it is a universal and undeniable truth that fat people are bad. Says fucking who? Says who? I'm sorry. Like, I'm willing to concede that fat people face harassment, that fat people face some forms of discrimination at certain areas because people are assholes. And I don't know if I'd go so far as to say bigot. That's a loaded word that I have a hard time grafting on there. But let's even say that some people are bigots. To say that it is an universal and undeniable truth held by the culture that fat people are bad, fucking where? Fucking where has that ever been said exactly? This isn't a fucking David Cage video game. I don't know people that... Don't get me wrong. The argument can be made that there's this general narrative that fat people are lazy, that fat people are gluttonous, that fat people are slothful. Like, you can even... I mean, if you want to put those on there, then I can concede to at least some degree how, yes, those are the general things understood by our culture, but to say that fat people are bad and that is something that is accepted as a universal and undeniable truth, that's taking it to a level so far that it's clear that it's only there to perpetuate your own victimhood. It's not even a matter of it being true or not. You just want to perpetuate your own victimhood and drive home how you are a victim, regardless of the fidelity of your words. Presented in this way, I had no room to understand my treatment as unethical or even odd. I accepted it as truth that had existed forever and ever. It wasn't until I began researching the history and sociology of fatness that I would learn that the way we fear fat is socially constructed. Fat and thin are make-believe categories the way gay and straight are. They were brought into existence for no other reason than to control people. What the fuck? And that's where the chapter ends. But I got a note on this fat and thin make-believe categories the way gay and straight are. Gay and straight aren't make-believe categories. They're labels for natural phenomena. In many animal species, there are those that create, like, it's not a pack bond. It's something more specific than that. It's not quite mating, I guess, but, like, this pair bond. Pair bond, that's what it is. A pair bond with a same-sex member of the same species. So gay is prevalent. It's just a natural thing that occurs in nature. Those aren't make-believe categories. They're labels for natural phenomena. Just and to say that, like, I understand her whole thing about being fat and it's a way to control women's bodies, or what the fuck ever she's been saying. So, like that, but where does fucking gay and straight come in to control people? Like, I'm just... And fat and thin are not make-believe categories. You can look at a person and see, especially a morbidly obese person, and see that they are fat. This is an issue with, yes, many things in human society are simply constructed, but oftentimes these constructed labels are there simply to give words to natural phenomena. So my God, that was a serious dose of virgie. So hopefully this all went through okay. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm not entirely sure if you guys are seeing another Melody's Escape video over this, or if I decided to include... So what I'm doing is I'm watching through Law & Order SVU, and I'm practicing portraits since they have such a big cast, and I'm starting with some very, like, cartoonish portraits because I'm intimidated. So the video that you're seeing, yes, my drawings aren't great. Please be kind if you did watch the video. But I'm going to leave it here. Let me know what your thoughts were on this chapter in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. Miss what certain comments that I had when I was first making this. So I hope this was okay. Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.